Am I online? Yes. I never know how to start these things. Sorry, I have to clear my throat. Thank you. Okay, sorry, I have to share this to the Facebook and to the Twitter, so give me just a second. Streaming live on YouTube! Exclamation point. Alright, Facebook done. And Twitter is now done. Alright. Welcome, everyone. This is the February live stream that I'm currently doing. Let me just mute my phone so that all of these important people who always are getting a hold of me won't try and phone me and interrupt our nice little discussion that we're going to be having here for the next 30 minutes or so, let's say. Yeah, 30 minutes or so. I have a few different things I just wanted to discuss that are just on the top of my head. So we're going to talk about some political stuff. I apologize, this is not a political channel, but there's just some things that I wanted to discuss around that. There is a book that I want to talk about, which I forgot to go and get before we started this, but that's fine. We roll with the punches here on this show. And I also want to talk about some podcasts. I did a video a few months ago about the podcasts that I was recommending people to go and see. But these are podcasts that I myself want to do that I'm very excited about. Okay, so there's one single person watching right now. Thank you for choosing to waste your Saturday with me. If you were here for last month's live stream, you know that we played a game. And so I'm going to continue that tradition here today. I have brought back Mind Trap. Mind Trap is this game that I think only myself enjoys just so incredibly much. It's this somewhat trivia game, somewhat like problem-solving game where people just get annoyed because they intentionally try to confuse you, or you really have to think outside the box of what it's about. I'm just going to reply back to Mike here in the chat who just said hi, exclamation point, return. So Mike, you and I, oh no, there's 3 people now. Great, 3 people watching here nowadays. Hi everyone. Here is question number 1 that I am going to be reading out here. Again, this is from the game Mind Trap that only I like. So, the question is this. Which one of the 3 would see most clearly in total darkness? A leopard, a bat, or an owl? So again, which one of the 3 would see most clearly in total darkness? A leopard, a bat, or an owl? And I'm not going to read out the answer right away. We'll figure that out here in a few minutes. But this is one of those things where it depends on how literal they are really being here. Because a bat would not see in the dark. They use echolocation. So I don't think that would be technically the correct answer. Leopard, being a cat, should be able to see well in the dark. An owl also, I believe, sees very well in the dark. I would guess the owl just because they can be flying down. Or, what I'm going to guess is that it's one of those questions where nothing can see in total darkness. Or some Bogota answer like that. But put your answers in the comments down below. We'll kind of collect them as we go forward here and see exactly what the right answer is. Let's get into topic number 1. I don't know how many of you are following the whole political thing that's going on in the United States. And again, this is not a political channel. I am going to say right up front, I am probably the worst person to talk about politics because I only know little bits of information here and there. But there's something that does somewhat affect Canada-US relations here recently, which is the travel ban that was put on here by President Trump here that prevents, even if you are a Canadian citizen, if you have dual citizenship, then you're not allowed to cross the border if you're in one of those 7 countries that have just been outright banned from entering the US. And it also is banning Nexus card members, which I am a member of, which I proudly am a member of, which means that you have gone through extreme vetting. You have to get your eyes scanned. You have to do fingerprints. You have to have like all these background checks done. You have to get references. It's not an easy process. It took me about 6 months of application and time and interviews that I had to go through, which any other person who has one of those Nexus cards also would have to go through. And I think that it's a little bit ridiculous, and you've seen it from a bunch of talking heads and news media places that the places that we have targeted, or that the US has targeted to outright ban coming into, has really nothing to do with terrorism. I think there's been one reported case of all of those 7 nations that any person in the United States has been affected by. So it seems a little bit short-sighted. I am all for making sure that borders are protected, that they're strong, that we do proper vetting, that we're not just opening up a floodgate and letting any single person come through. But I think that that's what's already happening. There's this false dichotomy that happens a lot of the time where it feels like there's people arguing that we just open a door and let anybody waltz into the country, and it's not really like that. At least from overseas. I know that there's a bit of a touchy subject on the southern border of the United States, but by and large, people coming to this country is not just a cakewalk. There is a lot of paperwork and stuff that you have to go through. In fact, I was listening to this This American Life episode, a great podcast and radio show out of Chicago, that was doing this story on one particular person, but specifically she was an interpreter for the U.S. military, and had done this incredible work, and she was greatly respected, and she was also denied entry into the United States. And it just seems weird that the military wants her to be here. Anyone that worked with her wants her to be here. They've been recommended that she get a visa to come, and yet she still can't make it here, even though her life is in danger. She had to flee to Jordan and out of, I believe, Iraq or Afghanistan. I've forgotten which country she was actually in. But it just seems weird. It seems weird that this is going on here right now, where myself, I could even be stopped. Although, let's be frank, I probably won't because I'm white. But I could be stopped at the border, and even though I have that proper documentation, I have that card that says I have gone through the due diligence, I've gone through the proper sources, you still can't come through here because we're just going to decide that we don't want you to be here anymore. Anyways, that's my piece. Like I said, I'm not a politician. I'm not a politics guy, so take that for what it's worth. Let's go back to our question. If you are just joining us, we asked this question from Mindtrap a few minutes ago, which was, which one of the 3 would see most clearly in total darkness? A leopard, a bat, or an owl? So, I'm going to flip the answer. We have only one person that's answered down in the comments below, and they say owl. I believe I said owl as well. So let's see what the proper answer is. Aha. So I told you it's going to be one of those dumb answers that people are going to get angry at. So I kind of mentioned this. So the true answer, is none. In total darkness, it's impossible to see anything. Don't you feel like you've wasted your life? All right, here's question number 2 before we go on to our second topic. Welcome to, I believe there's 4 people here now. Welcome to the 4 people who are watching. Thanks for being you. Why don't you introduce yourself down in the comments below? This is the question from this card. So, Miss Goodbody has a box of socks in her closet containing 24 red socks and 24 green socks. Since the closet is completely dark, what is the smallest number of socks she has to remove in order to be certain of getting 2 socks of different colors? So again, I feel this is one of those trick questions. Thank you, William, for saying no on the introduction. I appreciate that. So she has 24 red socks, not 24 pairs, but 24 red socks, 24 green socks. Since the closet is completely dark, what is the smallest number of socks she would have to remove in order to be certain of getting 2 socks of different colors? I I'd like to hear your answers to this. I have a feeling it's going to be 2 or something like that because she, pairs red and green together, so she knows that she's going to get 2 socks of different colors. 25 makes sense mathematically, where that would be the correct answer if this was a math quiz, but I don't think that's probably going to be the actual answer here. So, if you know math, let me know down in the comments and see if we can figure out the answer here together. Topic number 2. Let me just stand up. I apologize. I didn't have this ready before we started recording, so give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to grab something. Aren't you glad that you waited? So, calm down. Okay, so there's a book I'm reading currently. I'm just about finished it. Here's the dust cover. It's called A Field Guide to Lies. This, I always take the dust jackets off when I read hardcover books because I don't like to ruin the paper. This has been a really fascinating read. This is going through all the things that news reports or news channels, bloggers, anytime you see data given to you, how you should look at it critically, how you should be a little bit skeptical when people start throwing averages or percentages or statistics of any kind at you. And it's been really, really, really eye-opening. I want to talk about just a few things that I think it was really cool to think about. And once you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, that does make logical sense, but I would never have broken it down that way. So number 1, this is the first part that kind of blew my mind. And he's talking about how a lot of people, how do I want to phrase this, misinterpret the average group for the average individual. And so what I mean by that is, if you were to say the average American family or the average Canadian family has 3 children, does that also mean that the average child has 2 siblings? And the answer is not necessarily. And that's how people can really futz around and really use statistics to their advantage to try and put through policies. Because when you're looking at average families, you're looking at total groups. So this family over here has 8 children. This family over here has 4 children. This family over here has 1 child. And so when you do the average child, you're looking at, I have to do quick math, you're looking at 13 kids, but when you're doing the average family, you're only looking at 3 families. So you can actually have different numbers going on there. And he broke it out really nicely. So that's a good thing to understand, so that when someone says, hey, the average family does this, and therefore you should do this as a single person, you have to be a little bit pushbacky at that time. It's like, well, that might not necessarily be true. The other thing they really goes into a lot of detail about is graphs, and especially on TV or in news media, really looking at the numbers that the artist puts on the graph, because a lot of time they like to really screw with you, where maybe it looks like every tick is supposed to be 10 units or 10 things, but really the first 2 are 10, 20, and then it jumps up to 50. And so there's a big gap in there that's unaccounted for or is just kind of glossed over. And they're trying to make a specific point, but not actually giving you the whole thing. Another one that they talk about, a lot of companies do, is instead of talking about total units sold this year, they talk about, I'm going to get the wrong terminology, but lifetime units sold. So it always looks like the graph is going up, which would be true. You're going to you're going to sell more because you're adding on to your grand total. But Apple was given as the example where they, like the 2 iPhones ago, technically they sold less of that phone than the previous year, but total sales of the iPhone of all time, yeah, great. Steady stream upwards, but not if you were to look at total units sold per year. So you have to be really, really cautious and really look at what they're actually trying to tell to you. They also go into like Weasley words that people like to try and use. How science can be a hindrance or a help depending on how people look at it. Specifically, studies that come out, because a single study that comes out has been one group of researchers. Someone has looked at that and vetted it or tried to find any gross inaccuracies. But when people report on, hey, there's this new science experiment that just came out, or this new research that says this, you have to be careful because, again, that's only one study. It has not been replicated yet. We don't know for sure if that's exactly what the findings are going to show. And this is how we get those inconsistencies, like how injections cause autism in kids. Because that was one study that came out that was later debunked, and yet that is still thought of years and years later to be actually true by so many people. Conspiracy theorists do the same thing, where they might say 2, 3, 4 things that are true, and then they do a fifth thing that's like, nope, that's not true at all. So it feels true because it's surrounded by stuff that we know to be right. But then there's the one thing that's like, well, he said these 4 things that were right. This thing has to be true now. Well, not necessarily. So this book, A Field Guide to Lies, I would definitely recommend it. I'm sure there's, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I'm sure it's on Audible. I'm sure it's at your local bookstore or your library. Support your libraries. I'm sure you can go and find out more information about that. But great book. I definitely highly recommend it. I'm going to take a sip of water. Talking nonstop can dry out your throat. So, again, for those of you here watching, all 6 of you, half of a dozen, the question was, Miss Goodbody has a box of socks in her closet containing 24 red socks and 24 green socks. Since the closet is completely dark, what is the smallest number of socks she has to remove in order to be certain of getting 2 socks of different colors? Okay, so we have a few different options here in the comments. William thinks 25. Mike thinks 2. I don't know. I'm going to say 2 as well. Oh, look at that. William, you are the champion, because I think you got a bunch of answers right last time as well. 25 is the correct. So they went the actual mathematical route. They weren't trying to be stupid and mean to us here this time. So next time I see you, I'll give you a pat on the head. Okay, last question before we go into our last topic. So Sid Shady. Sid Shady is in jail and is planning his escape. Thank you, William White. You hate this game. I know, it's dumb. But I'm going to continue doing it because I find it humorous. So Sid Shady is in his jail cell and is planning his escape. His cell, which is on the 3rd floor, is 30 meters above ground level. Shady managed to remove one of the bars from the window, enabling him to squeeze through. He has a rope, but it is only 15 meters in length, and a fall of 15 meters would be too dangerous. Aside from the bars on his cell window, there is nothing else above or below where he could fasten the rope. However, using just the rope, Shady was able to escape safely. How? Sorry, I'm just reading the comments here again. Mike says, you're dismissing her luck quotient. Yeah, that could be very, very true as well. So, how does Sid Shady get out of his cell? He only has a 15-meter rope. His cell is 30 meters above the ground, and apparently there is nothing above or below that he can fasten that rope to. So, William asked me to read it again. Let me read it again. Sid Shady, his cell, which is on the 3rd floor, is 30 meters above ground level. Shady managed to remove one of the bars from the window, enabling him to squeeze through. He has a rope, but it is only 15 meters in length, and a fall of 15 meters would be too dangerous. Aside from the bars on his cell window, there is nothing else above or below where he could fasten the rope. However, using just the rope, Shady was able to escape safely. How? Well, depending on what rope it is, and how dexterous he was, you could technically untwine it and fasten like a longer rope out of it, potentially, or depending on what kind of rope it is. And it says he uses only the rope, so he isn't using like the bar that he already removed or anything like that. So, interesting. I don't know. We'll have to find out here in a moment. I know you are just clamping at the bit, or champing at the bit, I should say, to find out what the answer is. But before we do, let's talk about podcasts. So podcasts are this new passion of mine. And I should say new passion. I've been doing this podcast with a friend of mine named Grant. It's called Whatever This Is for 4 or 5 years, something like that. And that's been going well. The first few, honestly, even the first few months, they were awful. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to host an audio-only broadcast, and it really took a lot of time for both of us to get into it and really figure out what that show was and how it operates. So I've been doing that for a while. I'm also going to be launching this new podcast fairly soon with a friend of mine named Daniel, and it's called Assumptions. And we've wanted to do something like this for a long time. Daniel is a very devout Christian, and I would consider myself an atheist. And we wanted to just sit down and do a podcast where we respectfully talked about our different points of view and our different outlooks on life, and how that influences the media that we consume. How does he look at a Tarantino film from a Christian point of view, and how do I come at it from kind of that atheistic or humanist point of view? What assumptions are we making about the other side? How are we demonizing those people? How do we move forward? We're very respectful. We like each other. We're very good friends. So how do we make that all work? And so that's what the show is about. It's going to be a 9-episode kind of short season, and we go through a bunch of specific things. So movies, specific films. We talk about video games. We're going to be talking about social media and how we create our own stories using that point of view. So it sounds good for me at least, and it's been fun kind of producing that and making that. But there's all these other podcasts that I am watching and consuming. I'm always like a week behind because I have so many that I'm listening to and getting inspired to do other different ones. There's another one that I just started listening to called Cool Games Incorporated. It was referred to me by a friend. And it's just these two guys who sit down and are given recommendations for video game titles, and then they have to make up what that video game would actually be about, which is pretty funny, I think, in that case. One of the McElroy brothers. So if you listen to My Brother and Me, or Mabim Bam, for those of you who are longtime listeners of My Brother and Me, it's one of the McElroy brothers, Griffin, I believe, who's on that show, and it's pretty great. I think, though, there's been a few conferences I've gone to that have been really talking about podcasts and how it feels very similar to 2010 or 2011 YouTube, and how things are about to take off. Even though technically podcasts have been out longer than YouTube has, it seems like nowadays this is where a lot of different artists are going. They're creating really interesting, intriguing content. So I have these ideas for other things I want to do, and it's just this question of time, really, at this point, right? There's all these things I want to accomplish. Like, I've written a book, I've created other content, and it's just I do have video game ideas. I have other things that I want to do, games, even board games I have ideas on. It's like, how do you make all that happen? And it's hard to do it all at one time. I don't think it's possible to do it all at one time. You have to kind of parcel it out over a lifetime, or at least over a few years, because it's just you start really burning the candle at both ends if you're trying to do everything all at once. But the two other podcast ideas that I have, and you can tell me if these sound interesting to you, like, at all, or they just sound boring, is there's another person that I've become friends with here over the last few months. His name is Alan, who might be watching, might not be watching, not sure. And we want to start talking about startup culture, or growing your own business for the layperson. He is a entrepreneur himself. I am trying to be an entrepreneur. I'm trying to start my own business, and somewhat succeeding, somewhat failing at the same time. And I don't really know what I'm doing. So being able to have that discussion with someone who's a little bit farther ahead in their path, and me just starting out, and possibly even having guests come on who have achieved success and giving us advice as we go along. I think it would be interesting to be that fly on the wall with those conversations for people who are eager to start their own journey, or to start their own thing that they want to do. The other one is that I really want to do this because it's been in my mind for years, And if you're familiar with Zay Frank and his idea of brain crack, which is if you have an idea, just do it. Otherwise, all you do is obsess over it, and you can have your energies just depleted because you're only thinking about this one thing. And for me, it's making a fictional podcast, meaning kind of like in the style of, oh my goodness, Night Vale, Welcome to Night Vale, or there's the one from the UK that I listen to called Wooden Overcoats, which is actors acting out the scene, acting out the podcast. So you're basically listening to a radio drama, going all the way back to like The Shadow and Gunsmoke and all the other old radio shows that there used to be that people listen to. Blake says, I forgot Whatever Pod. I didn't forget Whatever Pod. I talked about it before you got here, Blake, I'm pretty sure. So I want to do this thing that takes place on a space station. I'm terming it basically the 7-Eleven of space. It's the last kind of pit stop that you have before you take a right and go off into the universe. And so there's this ragtag group of people who are there. Oh, I see. Blake was talking about the other person in the comments. See? Not me paying attention. Ragtag group of people who are staying on this space station, all have their own backstories, they all have their own passions and yearnings and failings and stuff like that as well. And I just think in my mind I have all of the individual characters down. I know exactly how I want them to progress. I understand how the season 1 arc would be. This is after a great war that kind of devastated the Earth and another race of aliens, and them trying to figure out how to live together. Anyways, what this requires, though, is actors that I would have to probably pay, or I should pay. I'd feel wrong if I didn't. Editing, getting that space to record everyone together, and it's a big undertaking. And I do want to get this to happen because I think it would be really fun. And the people I've told it to, or the actors that I pitched it to, have been very excited about it. So those are some of my ideas that I'm working on. Again, my children's book that is still not illustrated because I've tried to get an illustrator for, like 4 or 5 years. And each time I get one, it seems to fall through. I've also written another adult book is what I'm going to say, although that makes it sound more salacious than it really is. But a novel that I wrote that is just in a very rough draft. I would need to go through there and actually update it if need be. Anyways, that's the stuff that I'm working on. All this stuff that I have great ideas about. Are these ever going to find life? Maybe, maybe not. Hopefully they will. Let's catch up with some of the comments here. Oh, good. Yeah, Mike's going to check out my podcast. You should. It's great. And Blake says, a fictional podcast would be fun, but sounds really complicated. It is. There's another one that's called Homecoming, I want to say, that just came out from Gimlet Media that has... I'm just going to completely blank on her name. Nope. Catherine Keener. I think it's Catherine Keener, and who I love. I think she's a great actress. And who else is in there? The guy who played Poe Dameron in the latest Star Wars movie. I'm completely blanking on his name. And a bunch of other famous actors that you would know. They did a 6-episode season, and it seems to have gotten fairly well reviews. And I think they're trying to make it into a movie now, is what they want. But it's absolutely a complicated thing to do. But I still think would be kind of fun to try and accomplish. Let's go back to our question. Thank you, William. Oscar Isaac. Me and names. It's like I know them up until I'm about to say them, and then they just completely poof out of my mind. So we have some theories here in the comments here about Sid Shady, who was in a cell 30 meters above ground, only had a 15-meter rope, doesn't have anything above or below to actually attach it to. And how does he get out of his jail cell if he's using only the rope? So we have two options here. Mike says he's 2 meters tall, and at the end of the rope, it's only a 13-meter fall. Granted. Or William says he's 13 meters tall, and at the end of the rope, it's only a 2-meter fall. I think you're both right. Let's see what the answer is. Oh, look at this. I'm kind of right. I was talking about this before I went there. So the ever crafty Shady untwisted the strands of rope, which left him with 2 ropes, half the original rope's thickness, but twice the length. So he's able to climb down unscathed. A 13-meter fall is still a pretty long fall. So I was going to say that's still a break your leg territory if you were to drop from that height. This has been the February live stream. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out for a little bit here with me. I really, really appreciate it. I talk about usually at the end of my YouTube videos all the ways that you can get and hold of me, which is there's always Twitter that you can go to that you can find on my YouTube page. But you can also, again, listen to my podcast, whatever this is. You can, if you're a Facebook friend, you can see me on Facebook. I'm doing these every month. There is also Patreon if you want to go and help support me by giving me a donation every month. Totally, you don't have to, but it's there if you just have some extra dollars lying around and we're like, I don't need these shekels. Here you go, white man from Canada. So there's a whole bunch of different ways. Twitter probably is the best way. I'm on there all the time. Don't post a lot, but I do like to interact with people on the Twitters. Am I forgetting anything? Probably. That's something that Kyle likes to do, especially when he talks in the third person. I will be back in March. I will have just returned from Boston and New York City, which, are things and places. So until then, I bid you adieu. Have a great rest of your day.